Okay, so we have less than a month to go until the NRL opens its season in Las Vegas. This year there'll be 4 matches instead of 2. There'll be a Women's International, a Super League game, and 2 NRL games. Now, the Panthers play the Sharks, the Raiders play the Warriors in the NRL games. Really looking forward to those matchups. Really looking forward to them. Warrington and Wigan come over from the Super League, and of course the Super League has a few different rule variations to the NRL, and the refereeing is slightly different in interpretation. So it's going to be interesting to see, firstly, the strength of the sides that Warrington and Wigan bring to the table and bring onto the field, and also the intensity levels as well. Because the Super League season starts that little bit earlier than the NRL season, so these will be 2 sides that are already fully match ready and have finished their pre-season. And the England women versus Australian women in an international. We've not seen an international between these 2 sides in quite some time. That's going to be fun. Now, last year I was really impressed by the 2 games. It would have been nicer to see more fans in attendance, but ticket sales were pretty good, and the response from fans who went was fantastic, and a fair few Americans did attend. Now, yes, there was a lot of Australians, Kiwis and Brits who did go over from either side of the world to go to Vegas. There was about 5,000 to 6,000 British fans. There was a couple thousand French fans as well, and about 20,000 Australian fans, which meant about half the fans in attendance were actually from the United States, which is, I think, part of the reason why the NRL is going, is to try and grow the American fan base and get the American attention from advertisers, sponsors, and potential investors into the sport. Now, they've taken the Penrith Panthers over, and they are they've won 4 grand finals in a row. They're aiming for 5. It's going to be interesting to see how well Penrith perform on opening day. The Sharks were a little bit disappointing in the final series, but they had a very good regular season. And again, they've got a point to prove as well, so that'd be a really interesting matchup with some of the players on display. There's a lot of Origin players in both sides. The Raiders and the Warriors were very disappointing last season. The Raiders and Warriors both missed finals, so that's going to be an interesting matchup. They're going to want to make a statement, and I think the Warriors just had a down season. I think they are better than what last season suggested. They did lose a lot of close games. The Raiders, I think, are a team in transition. I've said that in the season preview videos that I've done. So I'm going to be very interested to see how Canberra, a team that I actually support, and I'm a Raiders tragic, how they actually perform against a probably very fired up New Zealand Warriors side, especially with Fisher Harris leading that pack. That's going to be an interesting battle between Fisher Harris and Joey Tarpanay. Off the bat, that's going to be a very interesting battle in the forward packs. The Raiders are a team in transition, so they could be a bit vulnerable. They could be very entertaining. There's a lot of young players coming through the Raiders system right now. And the Warriors will have a point to prove because they misfired last season. There were some injuries, but this is the post-Sean Johnson era. And Luke Metcalf, if he's fit, is going to be key for them. So that's going to be very interesting. As I say, the Warrington-Wigan game, I think that's a nod to the fact that a lot of English fans came over. They're 2 of the best sides in the Super League. And Sam Burgess being the coach of Warrington, that's going to be really interesting to see how his team play. They had some good moments last season. They just came up a little bit short when it came to grand final time. They didn't win the grand final, obviously, and they didn't take the Super League title. So they're going to have a point to prove. And I'm really interested. The ticket sales have been really strong. I will say this, have the NRL and Super League, for that matter, bitten a bit too much off, more than they can chew. I think a double header works. I think 4 games will the American fan base, the Australian and British and Kiwi fans will obviously love watching 4 back-to-back games in a fantastic city that is a fun, entertaining city in Las Vegas. A very vibrant city. There's a lot of activities to do when you're not watching, and there'll be people who will make a holiday of it, who will actually go there for a good week, 2 weeks, and this will be part of their holiday experience. And tickets are not overly expensive. I mean, last year I found tickets going for about £19 or about $30 Australian dollars. They weren't actually overly expensive, which probably explains why so many got tickets and went over to Las Vegas. But I do think 4 games is potentially pushing it a little bit, although this year they have got Fox Sports 1 as the carrier for all 4 games. They've guaranteed that they're not going to be on Fox Sports 2, they're going to be on Fox Sports 1, which means they get a bigger, wider domestic audience in the US. But I do think the teams they've taken, no problem with that. I think the Warriors should have gone last year personally, and I think the Raiders should have potentially gone last year as well. Not because I'm a Raiders fan, but because that's the capital of Australia. The teams that went put on a great show. They really, really did. The intensity levels were almost Origin level, and there is going to be a lot of Origin players and rep players on display for all four teams. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think the intensity is going to be very, very similar to last year. I think potentially we could see an upset with Cronulla over Penrith. The Warriors and the Raiders, I think it's going to be very, very close and very, very entertaining. These are two sides that were very porous defensively last year. They did leak a lot of points, so that could be a very open game. That could be a really fun game. And there is that New Zealand connection with both sides. There's a lot of Kiwi players in the Canberra setup, so that could be quite interesting. But the game I'm actually really looking forward to is England's women against Australia's women. I think that's what we hoped to see in the World Cup a couple of years ago. It didn't transpire. England fell at the semi-final stage. That's going to be fun. The best that the Northern Hemisphere can produce against the best that the Southern Hemisphere can produce as well. Overall, I think it's going to be good. Obviously, it's an indoor stadium, so there will be that you control the variable there, which is the weather. Last year, the pitch did start to cut up a little bit and did look a little bit knackered by the end of the second game. I don't think that's going to affect the players too much. If we're being honest, in the Super League, start the season, that's in the middle of the English winter. Pitches do cut up. And the Aussie players, when they're playing in the middle of Australian winter, there can be a lot of heavy rain, so pitches can cut up there as well. It was, to be fair, the Allegiant Stadium grounds crew put on a fantastic playing surface last year. It did hold up for two very brutal games. It's got to hold up for four, and that is a concern. Potentially the pitch cuts up a bit. But with that roof on, the atmosphere is contained, and with 4 matches and 6 club fan bases plus 2 international teams going head to head, we could see a lot of fans in attendance. Ticket sales have already been very, very good, stronger than last year, and the NRL and Super League are predicting that every seat could potentially be sold. They could even sell out the upper tier as well. I'm not saying that will happen, but ticket sales are already stronger than last year. 2 weeks ago, it was reported that already 30,000 tickets have been sold. They sold about 45,000 last year, so they're well on target with 3-4 weeks still to spare to sell out Allegiant Stadium. Now, will they actually sell out paid and actual attendance and corporate tickets or various things? But I do think it's gained the interest a little bit. The TV viewership, both here in the UK and in Australia, was really strong last year. The feedback that a lot of people gave was very, very positive of the whole experience. There were those who had concerns, and rightly so. But I will always say this, when the NFL took their first game to London in 2007, people said the NFL was mad because of the collapse of NFL Europe. And it wouldn't work. It would be a failure, a very embarrassing failure. Look at the NFL International Series now. It makes the NFL a lot of money. Now, yes, the gambling sponsorship is a big part of why the NRL is going to Vegas. They've made a lot of money out of this, regardless of how many tickets they sell. But the fact that they've now got an agreement to show all 4 games on Fox Sports 1, that's a big broadcast. That's going to get into over 100 million US homes, and it's at prime time over in the US. They're going to get a much bigger TV audience in the US and a streaming audience in the US than they did last year when they were forced onto Fox Sports 2 because the March Madness basketball overran. Or the basketball that NCAA basketball overran, and so the first 20 minutes of the first game was chopped off, and then they transferred over to Fox Sports 1, so they did miss out on a potential carryover from the NCAA basketball audience to the NRL. And we know what Americans are like when it comes to their team sports, their contact sports. Look what the viewership for the Super Bowl. About 180 million people will be watching the Super Bowl when it's played, if not more domestically in the US, maybe even 200 million. So if they can get a fraction of that, even if it's 5-10 million, that would be fantastic. And that's what they're aiming for, is between 1 and 5% of American sports fans to potentially view these 4 games. And of course, it's post-Super Bowl as well, which means there's a lot of sports fans who've had the NFL season end. They're waiting for Major League Baseball season to start. The NHL playoffs haven't begun at this point. And so they're in that kind of zone where yes, you've got March Madness with the basketball, but the major leagues have either finished their season or haven't started their season or haven't even started their playoffs. So this is a prime time for the NRL to get into the US sports market and get some of that TV audience. And that leads to advertising revenue, and that leads to potential investment and potential sponsors from the US. There's already American money in the NRL. And there's already an American connection with the NRL. There are sponsors and potential investors from the US looking at the NRL as an avenue to invest in. So this is a big step for the NRL to have 4 games alongside Super League and the international games with with England and Australia with the women. The concerns I have are, will the pitch hold up for 4 games in 8 hours? It was looking a little bit tired by the end of the second game last year. Also, how much turnaround are we going to have in between games? That's going to be very, very interesting as well. How much time between one game finishing and the next game starting is there going to be time for fans to get food and drink? And how many fans will stay for all 4 games? And with the British, Kiwi and Australian fans, most likely a lot of them may stay for all 4 games. But it's the US fans. Will they be willing to stay for 4 straight back-to-back games of rugby league? A lot of them did stay for both last year. There was a fair few that came in and out, watched one and didn't stay for the other, or didn't come for the first, came for the second. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited for it. But the concerns I have is the playing surface. Will it hold up? And will the US fans who turn up, who may be curious or maybe watched a little bit last year, will they be willing to stay for all 4 games? But ticket sales are already stronger than last year. I've seen a lot of ticket packages and holiday packages actually advertised for this on social media coming up in my newsfeed. It has been strongly advertised by Ticketmaster, for example, as part of a holiday package with various tour operators. So it has actually been well advertised, I think better than last year. I've already seen more adverts pushing the NRL season opener, which is a good thing, which I think is an area they could have improved on last year as well. But actually, they started much earlier in driving the promotion for this. They were starting to promote this last year in July, early August. They were already promoting the Vegas games. They were already advertising it on live NRL broadcasts. They were advertising it via the medium of the internet and social media. So they've been pushing this for a while, which I think has helped ticket sales and helped build some more interest. As I say, the viewership figures domestically in Australia and New Zealand and even over here in the UK and globally on the streaming services were really, really good. They were disappointing in the US, but that was partly because they were on Fox Sports 2, not Fox Sports 1. They got a guarantee that they're on the major channel, Fox Sports 1. This year, so that should get more eyes on the product and maybe some more curiosity from fans on the product. So I think the NRL have prepared themselves better this time round, but 4 games, is that one game too many potentially? But we're going to look at the same time. We've got the defending premiers, we've got a top 4 side, 2 sides that have made the finals before, made grand finals before. Admittedly, Canberra and the Warriors, they're not quite the top echelon, but they were happy to go, and I think the Warriors should have gone last year personally, but they're here now representing New Zealand, and we've got 2 of the best sides from Super League, so there's a lot to like here, and it's going to be interesting to see what the scorelines are, how the teams adapt to the slightly smaller field, because it's an NFL field, and so it's slightly narrower than an NRL field, for example. So the kicking game, how the teams manage the kicking game and the width, how defences also manage having to play on a slightly different pitch dimension. Both teams last year actually didn't find that too much of a problem, and they did prepare for it. So we shall see. But from me for now, thank you very much for watching. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys are as well. And I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.